Kale walked quietly through the palace corridors. The walls were tall and shiny, made of materials that reflected the sunlight in soft gold and silver. The air smelled faintly of flowers from the gardens outside. He had been working in the lower chambers all day, repairing small machines and checking energy systems. Humans were rare in the palace and most aliens barely noticed him. That was fine. Kale liked to work quietly, unseen, focused on his tasks. But today he felt restless. Something inside him wanted more than work and orders. He wanted to see the palace gardens, the fountains, and the strange, mystical water that everyone spoke about in whispers. The fountain water was said to be magical. Legends claimed that anyone who drank it could gain abilities no one else had. Humans were told to never touch it. It was forbidden. Kale had heard the stories many times, but curiosity had grown too strong to ignore. He slipped through a small side door into the garden. The sun was warm on his face and the flowers shimmered with soft colors. Birds with bright feathers sang quietly in the trees. And there it was, the largest fountain in the palace. Water sparkled as it fell, creating tiny rainbows in the sunlight. It was more beautiful than Kale had imagined. He stepped closer, feeling the power of the water in the air, almost like a faint energy humming around him. Kale looked around. No one was watching. The guards were far away and the other workers were busy in the palace halls. His heart beat fast. He knelt and cupped the water in his hands. It was cold, cleaner than anything he had ever felt. He hesitated. The stories came back to him. One sip can change you. You may never be the same. Curiosity won over caution. He drank. The water was strange and sweet, with a hint of energy that seemed to flow through his body immediately. Kale staggered slightly, surprised by the sudden rush of warmth and alertness. Then he heard it, a soft, calm voice almost like it came from inside his head. You have no idea what you just became. He froze, looking around. No one was there. The voice spoke again, gentle but certain. Kale swallowed hard. He did not understand what was happening, but he could feel something shifting inside him. It was as if his mind had opened, and he could sense things he had never noticed before. He felt his senses sharpen. The soft rustle of leaves seemed louder, the distant hum of machines clearer. He looked at the fountain and could almost see the energy flowing through it, twisting in patterns that no one else could understand. His heart raced. He realized he could feel the palace around him in a new way. It was strange, powerful, and exciting. Kale spent the next moments exploring the gardens. Everything felt different. He touched the flowers and felt their life force, their energy moving beneath the petals. He walked closer to the fountains and noticed tiny ripples in the water that seemed to respond to his presence. The palace, which had always seemed big and intimidating, now felt alive. Kale realized that he had changed, though he could not yet explain how. He remembered the voice. You have no idea what you just became. Kale thought about it carefully. He had always believed humans were small, weak, and overlooked in the palace. Aliens had better technology, more power, and more control. But now he could sense things they could not. He felt faster, clearer, and more aware. For the first time, Kale understood that humans might have abilities that went unnoticed, hidden beneath their quiet minds and creativity. Kale sat by the fountain for a long time, testing himself. He closed his eyes and focused. He could feel the patterns of energy in the water, the movement of air above the garden, and the pulse of the palace machines below. It was overwhelming, but he felt calm too. The forbidden water had given him something extraordinary. He knew this was only the beginning. As the sun moved higher, Kale heard the faint footsteps of a guard in the distance. He quickly stepped back from the fountain, pretending to be a simple visitor. The guard passed without noticing anything unusual. Kale breathed deeply, trying to calm himself. His mind was still buzzing with energy, his senses alive in ways he had never known. The forbidden sip had changed him, and he could feel the weight of that change already. Kale knew he could not tell anyone about the fountain or the voice. Humans were small, and if others discovered what he had gained, they might try to control him, or worse. He had to be careful, learn about his new abilities quietly, and understand what he could do. The palace had always been a place of rules, power, and limits. Now, Kale realized that he could push those limits in ways no one had imagined. As the day went on, Kale returned to his workshop, his mind alive with questions and possibilities. He touched the machines he worked on every day and felt them differently, understanding how they moved and responded. Even small tasks seemed easier, faster, and more precise. The change was real. The forbidden sip had begun a journey that could not be undone. And so, Kale continued his work, outwardly the same human engineer as before, but inside, everything had shifted. The water had given him power, insight, and a spark of something greater. He did not yet know the full extent of what he had become, but he understood one thing clearly. His life, the palace, and perhaps the fate of humans in this alien world, would never be the same again. Kale returned to his workshop, feeling the energy from the fountain still flowing through him. Every step he took felt lighter, every sound sharper. He touched the machines he had been fixing for years and something strange happened. The gears moved smoothly at his touch, circuits seemed to respond before he even switched them on. It was as if he could sense how they worked without thinking. Kale blinked and took a deep breath. The forbidden sip had given him more than he expected. At first he tried to ignore it. He thought it might be temporary, just a strange feeling from the water. But soon he realized it was real. He could hear the soft hum of distant machines, feel the air currents in the palace corridors, and sense the energy moving through the walls. Even the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed alive, warm, and connected to him. He gasped, understanding that the water had awakened something inside him, something humans had never had before. Kale experimented cautiously. He moved his hand over a small engine, and it started humming without touching it. He concentrated on the water pipes in the walls and could sense the flow inside them. It was incredible. The palace systems, which had seemed complicated and alien, now felt almost familiar. He realized he could predict how the machines would respond, almost like he was connected to them. It was a power unlike anything he had known, and it was exhilarating. The humans in the palace rarely spoke to each other outside of work, but Kale felt connected to them in a new way. He could sense their movements through vibrations in the floors and walls. The alien engineers nearby seemed unaware, walking past him, busy with their own tasks. Kale felt a small smile form on his face. Humans might be small and overlooked, but now he could do things no one else could. It was not strength or speed, it was understanding, insight, and perception. Over the next days, Kale tested himself in secret. He moved quietly through the palace, practicing controlling the energy he felt. He learned how to touch a machine and make it respond without touching a button. He could sense when doors would lock or unlock, when engines would start or stop. Every system seemed alive to him now. The forbidden sip had not just given him power, it had made him part of the palace itself. Kale's senses became so sharp that he noticed small details others missed. He saw tiny cracks forming in the walls before anyone else did. He heard the faint sound of water leaking in distant pipes. He could sense the patterns of air currents in the garden and the movement of shadows across the palace floors. It was overwhelming at first, but gradually Kale learned to control it. He realized that humans had a hidden potential, a kind of intelligence and perception that could rival the aliens' advanced technology if properly awakened. One afternoon, Kale was in the main engine room, testing his new awareness. He noticed a subtle imbalance in the energy flow. The engine was about to overheat, and if it did, it could damage part of the palace. No alarm had sounded yet. Kale focused, and with careful concentration he guided the energy through the system, stabilizing it before anyone noticed. The engine continued running smoothly, and the other engineers remained unaware. Kale smiled quietly. He had prevented a disaster without anyone knowing. Humans were often underestimated, but now he had proof that they could do extraordinary things. Kale also began to understand his own limits. The energy was strong, but it required focus. If he lost concentration, he could make mistakes. He learned to control his mind as carefully as he controlled the palace systems. It was both exhausting and exciting. He felt alive in a way he had never known. Humans were clever, adaptable, and curious by nature, and now he could use those traits in ways that changed reality itself. Despite his excitement, Kale knew he had to be careful. If the aliens discovered what he could do, they might try to control him or take away his freedom. Humans were often small and overlooked, but their potential could be dangerous if misused. He decided to keep his abilities secret for now, practicing quietly, learning more about the power he had gained. The forbidden sip had awakened something incredible, but it was also a responsibility. At night, Kale stood by the balcony, looking out over the palace gardens. The fountains sparkled in the moonlight, and he remembered the moment he drank from the water. He had felt a change instantly, but he had no idea how far it would go. Now, with his senses sharp and his mind alive, he realized that this was only the beginning. Humans had potential that no one had expected, and he was the first to awaken it. Kale returned to his room and sat quietly. He closed his eyes, focusing on the energy flowing through the palace, through his body, through the machines he had once thought simple. He felt connected to everything around him, understanding how humans could rise, adapt, and create in ways that even the most advanced aliens could not predict. The forbidden sip had changed him, yes, but it had also opened a door for all humans to be seen differently. And so, Kale continued to explore his new abilities in secret. Every day brought discoveries, new ways to interact with the palace and the world. He knew that the voice he had heard, the warning, was true. He had no idea what he had become yet, but he could feel the power, the responsibility, and the possibilities growing inside him. The human potential, long underestimated, had been awakened. And Kale was ready to see where it would take him. Kale felt a strange excitement as he moved quietly through the palace halls. His senses were sharper than ever, his mind alive with the energy he had gained from the fountain. He could sense the movement of guards, the hum of machinery, and even the subtle shifts in the air around him. He knew he had changed, but he did not yet understand the full meaning of it. The voice he had heard that first day, "You have no idea what you just became," repeated in his mind. Now, Kale felt that he was beginning to understand. It was not long before others began to notice. Small anomalies appeared in the palace systems. Lights flickered before anyone touched the controls. Doors unlocked and locked seemingly on their own. Machines started and stopped without explanation. The aliens who managed these systems were puzzled. Many of them were highly intelligent, trained for decades, but even they could not explain the subtle patterns Kale was causing. They did not suspect a human was behind it, not even one so quiet and overlooked. Kale realized he needed guidance. He could not understand all of his new abilities alone. One evening, he was approached by a small group of humans who had studied the palace quietly for years. They were older, experienced, and wise. They explained that the fountain water had been a secret for centuries, and that only a few humans had ever awakened its full potential. They spoke of legends. Humans who drank the water could sense energy, predict outcomes, and influence systems far beyond their normal reach. The humans also warned him. "With this power comes responsibility," one said. "You could help or you could harm. Others will notice if you use it carelessly. Some may want to control you. Some may fear what you can do. You must be careful." Kale listened carefully. He realized the truth of these words. The fountain had given him more than he could understand, and he had to learn how to use it wisely. Not all who noticed Kale were friendly. A few aliens had begun to suspect something unusual. They watched him, studied him, and tried to understand what was happening. Kale could sense their attention but chose to remain cautious. He did not want to confront them yet. Humans were small and often underestimated, but if he revealed his abilities too soon, it could cause fear or worse, force him to obey. He had to wait, learn, and prepare. The human group taught Kale ways to control his new powers. They showed him how to sense energy flows more clearly, how to predict how machines and systems would respond, and how to remain unnoticed while using his abilities. Kale practiced daily, testing himself in secret. Each day he learned more about what he could do. He could feel the palace as a living system, with energy moving in patterns that only he could sense. It was overwhelming at first, but gradually Kale felt in control. One evening, as Kale walked through the palace garden, he felt a sudden rush of alertness. A small energy surge was moving through the palace systems. Machines were humming strangely, lights flickered, and the fountains pulsed oddly. Kale focused, feeling the flow of energy as if it were a river beneath the palace. He could guide it, direct it, and stabilize it before anyone noticed. With careful concentration, he prevented a minor system failure, and everything returned to normal. No one suspected anything. Kale began to realize the potential of what he had become. Humans were often seen as weak, overlooked, or simple. But now he understood that human intelligence, adaptability, and curiosity could be powerful tools. The fountain water had awakened a hidden strength, and Kale could use it to solve problems that even the most advanced aliens might fail to handle. It was both exciting and frightening. The human group warned him again, "This is only the beginning. If you are discovered, everything could change. Some will want to use you. Some will fear you. You must choose how to act carefully." Kale nodded. He understood that his life, and perhaps the future of humans in the palace, depended on how wisely he used his abilities. He could hide, learn, and prepare, or he could act boldly, but bold actions carried risk. That night, Kale sat quietly in his room, closing his eyes. He focused on the energy flowing through the palace, feeling the subtle patterns, the movement of machines, and even the life force of those around him. He could sense the curiosity, the caution, and the fear of others nearby, even without looking. The forbidden sip had given him more than power. It had given him knowledge, insight, and a chance to prove that humans could rise to challenges others thought impossible. Kale knew he had to be patient. The palace was vast and many forces were at work. But he also knew that he could make a difference. Humans were underestimated, but when curiosity, intelligence, and determination were combined, they could achieve extraordinary things. Kale smiled faintly, realizing that the fountain water had not just changed him. It had begun a journey that could change how humans were seen forever. And so, Kale continued his secret work, guided by the whispers of the fountain and the wisdom of the human group. He practiced, learned, and prepared. The palace was alive around him, full of energy, mystery, and opportunity. The forbidden sip had awakened him, and now Kale was ready to discover what it truly meant to be human, and what humans could accomplish when no one expected them to. The palace was quiet that morning, but Kale sensed a change. Something was wrong. Energy readings in the lower chambers were off. Machines were humming unevenly, lights flickered, and the fountains pulsed irregularly. It was subtle, but Kale's senses, sharpened by the fountain water, detected it immediately. He hurried to the main engine room, moving faster than usual, his mind alive with calculations and possibilities. When he arrived, he saw what was happening. The central energy core, which powered the entire palace and its systems, was destabilizing. Small sparks jumped from conduits and warning lights flashed silently. If the core overloaded, it could damage the palace, the gardens, and possibly injure people nearby. Alarmed engineers were already trying to fix it, but their solutions were slow, and the energy patterns were unpredictable. Kale stepped forward, quietly observing the flow of energy. He focused on the core, feeling the pulses, the surges, and the rhythms of the machines. He could see patterns invisible to everyone else, sense the pressure in the conduits, and anticipate the reactions of the engines. His hands moved over control panels, almost instinctively as he guided the energy through alternative channels, stabilizing the system step by step. The other engineers stared, unsure what was happening. Some whispered nervously, but Kale paid no attention. He was in control. A sudden surge hit, stronger than before. Sparks flew across the floor and alarms blared. Kale acted quickly, redirecting the energy through auxiliary circuits he had noticed while walking past the systems earlier. Machines that had threatened to fail now ran smoothly. Lights stopped flickering. The fountains in the palace gardens flowed evenly again. Kale's heart pounded, but he remained focused. The crisis was far from over, but he could handle it. The engineers began to notice. One stepped forward. "How are you doing this?" he asked, bewildered. Kale glanced at him but said nothing. He did not need to explain. He only needed to act. His human mind, now enhanced by the fountain water, could see connections, patterns, and solutions that no alien engineer had considered. Humans were often underestimated in the palace, but Kale's actions showed that their creativity and intelligence could surpass even advanced technology. Kale moved through the engine room like a conductor of an orchestra. He adjusted valves, redirected flows, and monitored energy surges. The core began to stabilize. Sparks disappeared, lights returned to normal, and the hum of machines became steady. The engineers watched in amazement as a single human solved a problem that had stumped the most skilled aliens for hours. It was quiet, precise, and brilliant work. After the immediate danger passed, Kale stepped back. The core was stable, the palace safe, and the gardens untouched. The other engineers exchanged glances. Some were relieved, others astonished. They could not explain fully what had happened, but one thing was clear. Kale had changed the outcome and no one else could have done it. The humans, often ignored or undervalued, had shown their true potential. Word of the event spread quickly through the palace. Aliens who had once looked down on humans began to reconsider. Humans were clever, adaptable, and capable of solving problems in ways others could not. Kale became an example, not through power or strength but through ingenuity, observation, and skill. It was proof that human intelligence, combined with courage and curiosity, could rival the most advanced civilizations. Kale himself remained calm. He understood that this was only a beginning. The fountain water had given him abilities, but it was his own mind, training, and determination that had allowed him to act. Humans were not the strongest species, nor the most technologically advanced. But they were creative, adaptable, and capable of learning faster than most. And when these qualities were awakened as Kale's had been, humans could change outcomes that no one thought possible. That evening, Kale returned to his room, exhausted but satisfied. He sat by the window, looking at the palace gardens glowing under the evening sun. The fountains sparkled, the flowers shimmered, and the palace walls reflected soft gold light. Humans had been underestimated for too long. Now, with skill, intelligence, and courage, they had proven their worth. Kale felt proud, not just for himself but for all humans. As he reflected on the day, Kale realized something important. The fountain water had given him a spark, but it was human creativity and determination that had solved the crisis. No magic alone could achieve this. The human's ability to adapt, think and act had made the difference. He understood that his powers were only valuable if he used them wisely and to help others. That was the true lesson. Humans, small and often overlooked, could rise to challenges others deemed impossible. And so, Kale prepared for the days ahead. The palace systems were stable, but future challenges would come. He knew he could meet them. Humans could rise, create, and overcome. The fountain had awakened his potential, but Kale's mind, courage, and heart had proven that humans were capable of greatness. The palace, the empire, and perhaps even the universe would soon see what humans were truly known for: ingenuity, determination, and the ability to make the impossible real. The next morning, Kale received an invitation from the Emperor himself. The hall was vast and shining, filled with alien courtiers and humans who had watched the events of the previous day with curiosity and awe. Kale walked quietly, his heart steady but excited. He had solved a crisis that could have destroyed part of the palace, and now the moment had come to face the one who ruled this world. The Emperor sat on a tall, gleaming throne, observing Kale with careful eyes. "I have heard of what happened yesterday," the Emperor said. "A human has stabilized the palace core when our most advanced engineers could not. Tell me, how did you do it?" Kale bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I only acted with observation and understanding. I felt the energy of the systems and guided it to safety. Humans can see patterns and think creatively. I only used what I was given, and what I could understand." The Emperor raised an eyebrow. "So, this intelligence is human? A human mind, unenhanced, yet capable of such things?" Kale nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Humans may be small, but our minds can adapt and create in ways no one expects. We can solve problems when others cannot." The hall grew quiet. Courtiers whispered, aliens exchanged glances. Many had always thought humans weak, limited, and unimportant. Now they saw otherwise. The Emperor studied Kale. He realized the truth of what the human had said. Humans were underestimated, yes, but they had something powerful: intelligence, curiosity, adaptability, and courage. The fountain had awakened Kale's potential, but it was his mind that had saved the palace. That was the lesson: humans did not need strength or magic alone. Their greatest power lay in their ability to think, imagine, and act in ways others could not anticipate. Prince Kale, the young human boy who had first been inspired by the fountain, watched from the side. He understood now that humans were capable of greatness. They could rise when others did not expect it, use creativity and determination to face challenges, and change outcomes that seemed impossible. The prince's respect for humans grew, and he felt hope for the future. The Emperor continued, speaking to all present. "Let this be known: humans are not to be underestimated. They are not the weakest species, nor are they limited to menial tasks. They have potential, intelligence, and insight that can change the course of events. Let humans be respected for what they can accomplish." The hall erupted in quiet murmurs. Some were surprised, others skeptical, but all could see the truth in the Emperor's words. Kale stood quietly, realizing that the moment marked a new beginning. Humans had often been overlooked, small in size and influence, but their potential was now recognized. The fountain water had awakened abilities in him, yes, but it was human creativity, patience, and understanding that had truly made the difference. He understood that this recognition was not just for him, it was for all humans, and for what they could accomplish when given a chance. After the ceremony, Kale returned to his workshop. He was offered honors, privileges, and positions of authority, but he declined most of them. What mattered most was the respect humans had gained, the knowledge that their potential could be seen and valued. Kale knew that humans were capable of great things when they acted with intelligence and heart, and he wanted to continue showing that through action, not titles. In the days that followed, humans began to take more active roles in the palace. They were allowed to work alongside the aliens, not just in menial positions, but in areas requiring thought, strategy, and creativity. Kale trained others in observing patterns, understanding systems, and using their minds to solve problems. Slowly, humans became known not for strength but for ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. Prince Kale often visited the workshop, fascinated by the machines and systems humans could control. He watched and learned, understanding that humans were unique. He realized that strength was not always about power or size, but about intelligence, curiosity, and determination. The young prince carried this lesson with him, promising to share the story of humans' abilities throughout his life. Kale, meanwhile, continued to explore his abilities quietly. He experimented, learned, and helped solve problems that no one else could. The fountain water had been a spark, but it was human skill and heart that kept the palace safe, improved systems and inspired respect. Kale knew that humans could rise above expectations, adapt to any challenge and make the impossible possible. Years later, the story of the human who drank from the palace fountain became legend. Humans were no longer underestimated. Aliens treated them with respect, and young humans dreamed of what they could achieve. Kale remained a symbol, proof that even the smallest species, through curiosity, intelligence and courage, could change the world. The palace continued under its bright sun, the fountains flowing, gardens blooming and systems running smoothly. Yet it had been forever changed. Humans had proven that they were not ordinary, they were creators, thinkers and problem solvers. The forbidden sip had started a new era, one where humans were known for what they truly were capable of, extraordinary. And so, the human engineer looked quietly over the palace, knowing that the impossible had been achieved, not by magic alone, but by human skill, determination and heart. A new era for humans had begun.